Ah, not again. This is an all too familiar feeling for Windows users when a major error causes the whole system to crash. When the blue screen of death appears, it usually includes some kind of generic error code that could mean 10,000 different things. Personally, I don't find this information helpful and usually head straight to Event Viewer to get additional information once I can get back into the system. Well, according to its FOSS News, the blue screen of death will be coming to Linux. So, hope you're ready. Let's talk about it on this episode of Linux Sundays. I have a favor to ask. If you like this type of video and want to see more content like it, make sure you are subscribed and hit the bell button for notifications. Also, don't forget to give this video a like if you like it. Let me know what you liked, didn't like, or if you have any comments, questions, concerns, or emotional outbursts down in the comments below. And lastly, stick around all the way to the end to get the most out of this video. Let's do this thing. All right, I'm going to go ahead and shrink my face down here. I actually got the article up here. Here it is from a website called It's FOSS News. The blue screen of death comes to Linux thanks to System D. Now Linux hosts get to experience the horror of a blue screen. Yeah, definitely have not really found it helpful in the Windows world. Personally. Now, let me actually show you what I'm talking about here, in case you've been living under a rock or maybe just haven't ever experienced it. Because honestly, I don't experience blue screens of death very often. It's very very rare. Like this is what it looks like. It's like, hey, you ran into a problem and PC needs to restart. We're just collecting some information, then we'll restart, and then it says stop code, critical process died. Great. That doesn't tell me anything. I'm like, which process? So yeah, and it's got this QR code here that you could scan, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's the blue screen of death. Now, there's a few things that we're going to need to talk about in order to be able to better understand this topic, and that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. And I'm not going to be covering these topics in depth because they're very extensive topics, and I do plan on covering them in the future. So definitely make sure you're subscribed for that content. So the first thing that we need to talk about is going to be System D. Um, to understand the blue screen of death, this is what we're going to need to know to start off with. Now, System D is a system used to get the Linux system itself going and managing services. It's capable of managing tons of different services and is present on many of the top Linux distributions, Ubuntu, Fedora, and so on. It also provides additional functionality such as Journal D, which is used for logging, and Network D, which can be used for networking. System D is great because it makes managing a Linux system a lot easier. Again, I'm not going to cover this in detail here, but I do plan on doing additional videos in the future. Now, there is some controversy around System D because it does kind of centralize like service managing all into one location, and it's definitely a lot more complex than what preceded it in InitV, I think is what it's called. I always forget what that one's called, but yeah, it's much more complex, and some people may make the argument that it doesn't really follow the Linux philosophy. I think it's fantastic because it definitely makes life a lot easier. Versus, it sometimes with just the old way of doing it, it could end up being a little tedious just to get things done. Where here you can do it a lot more simply, which in my opinion which is actually a great thing. And I'm just going to show you here. I'm going to switch to the command line here. We're going to do system ctl status, and then we're going to do just ssh. And basically what we're doing here is we're querying the status of ssh from system D. And then we can see here it's actually giving us the status back. So this is an example, and you can even see here like loaded lib system D system ssh service. So this is an example of a system service that is available on my Linux laptop, which is sitting over here that I'm just SSH'd into. So that's what it looks like. Now, the next thing that we want to go ahead and talk about is going to be logging on a Linux system. Now, in general, what is logging? Because that's going to be one of the most basic questions. And if you're new to, the computer, operating system world, this may be a new concept for you, but it's a way for a system to log events that happen on the system or like an application on the system. These can tell you everything from the system is working fine to some kind of critical error and the system is, it's shut down you know, and things like that. Now, there's three places really, the three big places you can get logging information from on a Linux system. So let's go ahead and talk about those here. I'm going to clear this out. I'm going to try to remember not to get my face in the way too much here, but the first thing that you can always do is you can always just go to cd bar/log, and we're going to just come over here and you can actually do an, whoops, let's do a, I went a little too fast there, I'm sorry. Let's do an ls tac-l. Yeah, see, here we go. And we'll just scroll up here to the top. See, we've got all these different logs here. There's tons of different logs that are going to be available in this directory. So essentially, what this is it's you know it's a folder where you can, or a directory where you can get a lot of the logs that you're going to use, like you know, and it's also going to vary based on application. Sometimes I'm sorry, based on the application, you may also see separate logs here, but that'll vary based on the application. I'm just going to shrink this down because it's really hard to see with that level, at that level of zoomed in here. But we've got tons of stuff, like we've got the auth log, we've got cups, journal, kern log, tons of like individual things here that are going to be used for different purposes. I'm not going to be getting into this specifically here in this video, but it is something I do plan on covering in the future. So if there's anything that's specific to these, you know, systemd logging or anything like that, then definitely go ahead and let me know down in the comments, because that'll definitely help out when writing out that video. So yeah, this is just, you know, I'm not going to get into these in detail here, but I just wanted to be able to show that to you. Now let's go ahead and clear this out. I'm going to keep it zoomed out because the logs are quite extensive as far as the information they give, and it makes it a little bit easier if it's not so zoomed in. So let's go ahead and do dmessage. And basically what dmessage is, it's going to give us information from what's called the ring buffer. I'm sorry, from the no, the kernel. Is the ring buffer? I think it's the ring buffer. I always forget what it's called, but the ring buffer, that'll it basically holds like just logs from when the system booted until the present. So this is something that you'll be able to kind of see what's been going on with yours in your particular case. You know, say, you know, something that's happened since boot that maybe it hasn't shut down the system, but maybe it's making things act funny. You can, you know, kind of search for stuff like that, look for errors and you know, services. And this is useful for a lot of things. You know, it can give you output in regards to lots of different things, you know, because it goes all the way back to the early stages of boot. So you can go all the way back there and see, hey, maybe something happened at boot if you're suspecting that maybe something didn't initialize properly, or something like that. This is a way that you can go ahead and go about doing that. So pretty cool stuff. Now let's clear this one out. And the next one we're going to do is we're going to do journal CTL. And this is actually done by a daemon on systemd called journal D. And this is going to give us stuff going back for a while. And you can see here that the date here at the top is October 20th. So this goes, I think that was probably about the day I set this laptop up. You know, it's been a couple months already, but yeah, there'd be tons of logs here, so we're not going to sit here and go through all of that. But these are the primary ways that you can do that, and you can tell there's a ton of information. So one of the best ways to do it is to just do, I can zoom in for this one. Is just do dmessage, and then just do grep, and let's just put error. You can sit there and see, you know, filter it out with grep and stuff like that. You can use less, more, all those commands to help make navigating this output that much easier. So in each one of them, each of these methods is going to have their advantages and disadvantages. So keep that in mind. I will say this can be a lot of information to go through. Like, you know, like just as I've pointed out before, you know, so grep is going to be your best friend. Keep in mind that even in some of the there's also going to be graphical ways of doing it, but like, you know, if you're using a graphical user interface for your Linux system, so there are ways to do it that way as well. I'm not going to get into those just because I'm primarily covering stuff from the command line, where you can find all that stuff. So I do plan on doing, you know, more videos on Linux logging in the future, so make sure to let me know if there's anything specific that I should be calling out in those videos, as well as make sure you're subscribed for those so you catch those. So, all right, so now let's talk a little bit more about the actual blue screen of death in Linux. And here in the article, they actually give us kind of like their own interpretation of what it may look like. And you can see here it says a dummy blue screen of death, not a representation of how it might look. So this is something that it could look something like that. We don't know at this point in time. But one thing we can also see here from this output is that the blue screen of death is going to be implemented with systemd version 255. And it's going to be called the service will be called systemd BSOD. And then you can actually check what version you're on of systemd is by going systemd tech version. And it's right here. I'm on systemd 252 on this laptop. So that's how you can tell. Just something to share there with you. Now, based on the article, it's going to provide an error message of what caused the blue screen of death and provide a QR code to scan. So it's probably going to look something similar to the Windows version, which, honestly, like the QR code thing is great, but it's like it's going to take you to a place where it's like, hey, this could possibly be it. But without it being more specific, as far as the error goes, it's just like, how are you going to solve the problem when it can be 10,000 different things? That's always been my thing. But yeah, it is what it is. And the only thing, like, because when we're talking about logging, and depending on the logging setup, and if you're using like a logging service like Syslog, is log messages are going to be categorized. Like there's usually 7 different categories that they're going to fall into. And depending on like which system you're using, those logs will go by different names. But according to this article, it says that only emergency level messages are going to be presented with the blue screen of death. So that is a good thing because typically these critical emergency type things, these are going to be the things that'll like crash your entire system. So that's why it's good that they're only going to be including those and not really including other stuff because you could some people made the case with Linux it's just they give you so much information and da 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 this is a situation where they're only going to focus on those and I would think that in most cases you're going to have fewer messages than the entire D message output or something like that but yeah and emergency is the highest level for the way that the system accounts for it um, yeah, and when we're talking about this blue screen of death, this is really going to be something that can be good for, you know, newer users to Linux, because it's going to borrow something that people are familiar with, especially if they're coming from Windows or maybe they use Windows in their workplace and they're familiar with the blue screen of death. It's going to be an easy transition. And honestly, just because Microsoft doesn't always mean that it's a bad idea. And like the idea of the blue screen of death is not a bad idea, but it's just like the usefulness of it, I think can be questionable at times. I have not spent a lot of time working that like as closely with the Windows operating system as I have with Linux. So there is definitely a possibility that maybe there's something I'm missing in there, but I've just never really found these blue screens of death to be super helpful. But yeah. But yeah, so yeah, it's gonna tell like with these messages, it's gonna tell you what the error is, which could help spare you hours trying to search through forums and tutorials on how to just check your log messages and stuff like that. So that can make a really big deal. It can be time saving. Because that's a lot of what we do as Linux users is searching for the meaning of this, the meaning of that. So this could help at least narrow it down a little bit more, and maybe even give it to you like in a maybe they'll give it to us in a more user understanding friendly formatting and things like that. So but yeah, so the last thing that I just wanted to point out about this whole topic is that many distributions already have like their own error communication, like especially like I know I've seen it very front and center with Ubuntu is like you'll get like this pop up that comes up and says, hey, do you want to share it with Canonical? But the cool thing is with this will give a more consistent method of being able to at least report these types of events, make them very present for users and stuff like that. So honestly, overall, I would say that it's a good thing, because I do understand Linux a little bit better, so I kind of understand the usefulness of this. Linux is great, but it's not always the easiest to use, and this could make troubleshooting a bit easier, even for us experienced folks. Because even as experienced Linux users, I still get frustrated troubleshooting these specific types of issues. So I'm definitely looking forward to this, and I'm very very intrigued to see how it's implemented. But yeah, make sure to check out the previous versions, the previous episodes of Linux Sundays. If you're caught up there, check out this other video from my channel instead. Remember, mistakes make you better, so keep on making them. Thank you so much for watching my video, and have the greatest of days.